moment, Putin is on the front foot. If I was characterising him, he'd be sat with his pussycat on his lap, stroking it gently, chuckling at the way that NATO, the West, Europe, and America is rushing around trying to form some negotiating strategy when you know you've got no interest in that at all. You're going to continue doing what you're doing until you've achieved your objectives or you're forced to stop.
Ukraine's President Zelensky has denied Russian allegations that Ukraine launched a drone attack on one of President Vladimir Putin's residences, accusing Moscow of trying to derail peace talks. Russian Foreign Minister says Kyiv used 91 long-range unmanned aerial vehicles on Putin's state residence in Russia's northwest Novgorod region. The Kremlin says it will now review its position in peace negotiations, and it's not yet clear where Putin was at the time of the attack. Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell joins us now. He is a military analyst and a former fighter pilot. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Jane and Rosie.
Sean, I guess the question here is, could this be a false flag that's really intended to derail the peace talks?
Well, I think you've got to be, there's several things here, not least of which the timing. Let's look at President Putin has a number of residences. In a war, in the Second World War, we used to target the German leadership. They used to target ours. So it's a perfectly legitimate target. Let's start with there. 91 drones. If you were going to do an attack against Putin and try and take him out, and you do one of the really surprise attacks like they did on one of the air bases with those drones, you wouldn't do this vague 91 drone attack on a residence when Putin wasn't even there. And also you've got to look at the timing here, one of which is it's just literally within 24 hours of the peace talks happening in Florida. Those talks, if the strategic objective of those talks was to get Trump slightly more on side with Zelensky and the Western side, which appeared to be the case, it was no great surprise that President Putin wants to rattle the cage again. President Zelensky's called this lies. There is absolutely no evidence. If Putin was genuinely believed that this actually happened, he would provide some evidence as well. And I think the irony here, Jane, if I may, is that for 4 years, Russia's been prosecuting an illegal war, attacking Ukraine, civilian targets, flats, the like, sometimes with over 1,000 drones a night. We've seen the devastation that's caused. I think we've got to look and see this is Putin's efforts to derail the potential peace talks, and I think we have to see it for what it is.
It does seem interesting, though, because trying to dig into the psychology of it, Sean, what do we think Putin would gain by claiming this had happened?
Well, partly you've got to look at his strategy with President Trump. It won't be that long ago that President Trump recognized that Ukraine was using long-range missiles to attack the energy infrastructure in Russia and forced President Putin to the table. President Trump was prepared to offer Tomahawk missiles. One phone call from President Putin, and suddenly that option was turned off. President Putin has no interest whatsoever in negotiating. I've been chatting to my senior military colleagues. I've been to Ukraine, and also MI6 said there's not a shred of evidence that Putin actually wants to negotiate. So he's using whatever he can to undermine President Trump's case for bringing this war to a negotiated settlement. Because at the moment, Putin is on the front foot. If I was characterising him, he'd be sat with his pussycat on his lap, stroking it gently, chuckling at the way that NATO, the West, Europe, and America is rushing around trying to form some negotiating strategy when you know you've got no interest in that at all. You're going to continue doing what you're doing until you've achieved your objectives or you're forced to stop. So I do think this is all part of a wide sort of theatre going on at the moment. And the West has eventually got to get to grips with the fact that they're going to have to put pressure on Putin to bring this war to an end.
Yeah. Sergei Lavrov has said that of the 91 drones that he claimed were launched at Putin's residence, they were all intercepted and destroyed by Russian air defence systems, and said that there were no reports of casualties or damage as a result of the attack. I mean, that's, very fortunate, isn't it? 91 drones leaving no damage whatsoever. What do we actually know about Vladimir Putin's personal security at his homes, Sean?
Not a great deal, but I'd imagine he is particularly well protected. And there are a number of residents in Novgorod. I think it's also worth pointing out that President Zelensky has been targeted a lot. Kryvyi Rih is his home town, and that's regularly appeared as a target for Russian attacks. And to my knowledge, there's no military targets down there at all. So I do think this is somewhat hypocritical. And I draw you back after 4 years of war, 4 years of Russia pounding away. Do you not think it's slightly coincidental that within hours of the conclusion of the Florida talks, that suddenly Putin is on the phone claiming that he's been attacked and causing anger? I think the other question for me is, why did Trump believe this was so important? Why did he believe Putin at face value, given the timing? You know, why did President Trump mention the Tomahawks in some sort of random statement, almost as if he'd made a gesture to try and keep Russia at the table? And I do think, you know, this is one of those things where it isn't a great surprise. And actually, if you strip away the layers, it might be a sign that Russia's getting a bit rattled. It's getting realizing that there may be pressure brought to bear in the coming days and weeks, and that could make Putin quite uncomfortable.
Thank you so much for your time this morning, Sean. We really appreciate it. That's Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell.
Russia will revise its position on a peace deal with President Zelensky after they claimed Ukraine sent drones to attack Putin's presidential residence in Novgorod last night. The claim comes hours after Donald Trump met with the Ukrainian leader in Mar-a-Lago. The US president described the peace deal as 90% done. Here is Trump speaking earlier this evening.
I don't like it. It's not good. I heard about it this morning. You know who told me about it? President Putin told me about it. Early in the morning, he said he was attacked. It's no good. It's no good. Don't forget, you know, the Tomahawks. I stopped the Tomahawks. I didn't want that. Because we're talking about, you know, it's a delicate period of time. This is not the right time. It's one thing to be offensive, because they were offensive. It's another thing to attack his house. It's not the right time to do any of that, and can't do it. And I learned about it from President Putin today. I was very angry about it.
Well, I'm joined by the former US ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul. Michael, good evening to you. Thank you for being with us.
Sure, thanks for having me.
It appears that Donald Trump believes the word of Vladimir Putin and is criticising the actions of a drone attack on Putin's residence by Ukraine, which Ukraine has flatly denied ever took place. They've called it one of Russia's typical lies. What do you make of it?
Well, first, President Trump should confer with his intelligence community. I should call his director of the CIA to confirm this attack before commenting on it like he just did. Tragically, he always believes Putin. He always goes with Putin. We've known that now for a decade. Remember very famously in Helsinki when the two leaders met, and there was a question about Russian interference in the 2016 election, and Trump decided to believe Putin and not his intelligence community. So he has done this before. I think it's premature to side with Putin over one phone call. And I wish he would use the full United States government before he makes these kinds of pronouncements to the world.
What do you make of Russia's claim here? They say that they're going to consider their position on peace negotiations. The accusation is that Ukraine launched a drone attack, 91 long-range drones, on this residence of President Putin, but that all the drones were destroyed. So there's no damage to the actual property as far as we understand it.
Well, first, I hope we have independent confirmation of what actually happened and where it happened. Second, this notion that they've changed their position suggests that they had a cooperative position yesterday, and now they're pulling back as a result of this drone attack. In reality, they haven't had a cooperative position. They haven't been engaging in any serious negotiations towards ending the war. All they have done is demand more and more of President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. Tragically, but necessarily, I see that President Zelensky has acquiesced to that. And what he brought to the table in Florida yesterday was another series of concessions, including, rather remarkably in my mind, an idea that Ukrainian forces might pull back from the front line in Donbass if Russia would do so as well. That's a major new concession. And yet Putin hasn't changed his position at all throughout 2025. Actually, you could go back to 2022. I think he still has the same war objectives. And he believes that if he just sticks to his guns, sticks to his positions, the West will lose interest. Trump will move on, and eventually he'll achieve his war aims through military means.
Does Donald Trump here is this him trying to play master negotiator, to express sympathy for Putin, outrage that there might be a drone attack on Putin's residence, whilst at the same time having just met with Volodymyr Zelensky and having made encouraging noises after that meeting? Is that him trying to play negotiator, or does he look naive in coming out and criticising an attack for which there is no evidence of?
You know, that's a great question, and I don't know the answer because I don't know how President Trump actually thinks. It appears that that's exactly what he's seeking to do, to show empathy to Putin, outrage, those kind of remarks. By the way, none of that empathy was expressed yesterday in Florida when Putin was attacking civilian targets in downtown Kiev. That's where the president's residence is, by the way.
Yeah.
He didn't do that, but he did it today. I think that's what he believes he's doing. I just question whether it achieves the objectives. Throughout 2025, the president has shown sympathy towards Putin. He has expressed interest in realizing his military objectives, thinking that by giving these concessions to Putin, he will stop fighting in Ukraine. And if it worked, I would applaud the president. But so far, it hasn't worked. In fact, I would say so far it's produced the exact opposite effect. Putin has pocketed those concessions and asked for more. And therefore, I think if the president wants more success in 2026, he has to just stop appeasing Putin and start putting pressure on the Russian leader. And in doing so, in my opinion, that's two buckets of activities he could do. More sanctions on Russians and more weapons for Ukrainians.
OK, well, he has hinted that there may be more sanctions for Russia if this peace deal doesn't progress along at the kind of speed he wants it to. We do know, of course, that Zelensky has said the 20-point peace plan is 90% agreed. Donald Trump says a security guarantee for Ukraine is close to 95% done. But there are still one or two very thorny issues, says the US president. Are we any closer to understanding what might be in that peace deal as it stands?
Well, first, let's emphasize it's 95% negotiated between Ukraine and the United States. That's what the negotiations were yesterday, about things that the Ukrainians wanted the Americans to provide. We're not, we haven't even got to Putin yet. He hasn't agreed to any of it. In fact, he's made very clear, both his own comments and through his aides, that he's rejected this entire plan. And on the particular sticking issue of Donbass, he said very clearly just 2 days ago, either they give it to us all peacefully, or we will continue to fight there until we occupy all of Donbass militarily. I hope it's wrong. I hope that's a maximalist position that he may come off on. But so far, he's shown no indication that he's ready to negotiate in a serious way about the 20-point peace plan that President Trump and President Zelensky were talking about in Florida yesterday.
Well, look, Michael, thank you so much. We await more detail. We're not very much further along. The agreement on a free trade zone in Donbass also unresolved, Donald Trump said as well. No timelines offered at the moment, which is, well, interesting, isn't it? But let's see how the next few days and weeks pan out. Michael McFaul, thank you for being with us, former US ambassador to Russia. Thank you.